Welcome to the Training Ground Guru podcast in association with Hudl. In every episode, we bring you insights into the teams behind the teams in professional football. Coming up on today's episode.
When I went to New York Red Bulls, I didn't know anyone. So I've come from a football club that I've been there for 9 years. I spent my 20s, I grew up there. I loved every minute of it. And now I've completely, moved across the world. It really tested me and everything I thought about myself, the good, bad and the ugly. And that's part of why I went. In the first year, that was probably one of the toughest years that I've had in my career so far. And COVID, came into the mix as well on top of it. So there's a lot of different dynamics, but there's a few days where I thought, oh God, what have I signed myself up for here?
I'm Simon Austin from Training Ground Guru, and our guest on this episode is Natasha Patel. Natasha is one of the most senior women working in professional football. She started off as Academy Analyst at Southampton and went on to become their Head of Analysis. In 2019, she moved to the MLS with the New York Red Bulls before returning to Saints just over a year ago as Assistant Academy Director. Natasha told me about her career in football, about being a key part of a new era at Southampton, and about the merging of coaching and analysis in the modern game. Thanks very much for joining us on the podcast, Natasha.
Thank you for having me, Simon.
And I was going to spin right back to the start of your career. I was just wondering, have you always been interested in football and analysing football?
Yeah, I've always loved football. I have two older brothers that are always playing football in the back garden, and they're massive Liverpool supporters. And I was born in Essex, so I was a Tottenham supporter growing up. But we always played football together. Whenever it was on the TV, we always watched it. So it was always very much a part of our household. And my middle brother started playing football for his local team, and then it kind of got me interested in it might be something that I want to do and see why he's enjoying playing football so much. So when I was 7, we moved to a little town called Chippenham, and my local primary school around the corner had a team, and my teacher saw that I was always playing football during the lunch breaks or after school as well, and said come along and play in the team. At the time it was very much a boys team, but at that age there was no physical barriers or anything of that sort, so I was quite comfortable playing in the boys team, and I just loved playing football, watching football at any opportunity. My mum, when I was coming home from school, had to drag me indoors because I always just wanted to play football in the street with my friends. So I didn't play to a high level, just played for Chippenham Town till I was about 18. But in terms of having a career in the game, I didn't really know that was possible. I knew that I wanted to be involved in football. I just didn't know where an opportunity would be available. So my teachers at school suggested that I go and study sports science, get a bit of a broader range of the different disciplines within sport and see what that could do for me. So I was very fortunate to get an opportunity to go to Liverpool John Moores University, and there I studied, sports science, psychology, biomechanics, everything you can imagine, of course in a sports science degree, but I had a really good lecturer called Alistair McRobert. He must have known that my scientific side wasn't probably as strong as my interest in football and analytics, so he kind of suggested that I look at an analysis module that they were doing, and this was 2009, 2010. I was in my last year of my study, so I already had 2 years of sports science under my belt, and I wasn't quite sure of where I wanted to go. And he suggested that I took this module. We had a classroom of MacBooks, and he said, you know what, why don't you come in, have a look at what sports code is, and start watching some games. And he knew that I had a passion, and I would spend hours in there dissecting games, and he spent a lot of time with me just reviewing games. So that was brilliant for me to just get a little insight into what analysis was, and potentially could be a possible career.
That's interesting. What stage was analysis at that time? Was it an established sector of football?
At that time, 2009, 2010, no, analysis wasn't that prominent. We only had one module on our course, and there wasn't really many full-time analysts. So even to get a little insight into analysis that early on was brilliant. Of course, that was back in the Prozone days, and from even going from Liverpool John Moores to Nottingham Trent University, was one of the first masters in performance analysis. So Alistair recommended that I go over there, and I had another brilliant lecturer called Matt Robbins who took me onto the course, and I was able to really get into the history of analysis, notational analysis. There was a lot of applied modules where I could actually go into a bit deeper. We did a lot of work with Prozone using the software. They had links with Nottingham Forest. We would go in at the weekends and film games and spend the Monday morning, I'd say about 8 hours Monday morning, coding everything from who touched the ball, who did they pass to, where did it go, what did the action then lead to. And I mean, the outputs at that point were brilliant, but of course you're spending 8 hours. But I think it was the first time I thought, hang on a minute, this, for all this work, the output that you can gain from it and also give insights to coaches and players is amazing. Yeah, I was able to work with Nottingham Forest at the weekends on a voluntary basis and do that while I was studying at Nottingham Trent University and learning more about the principles. And again, Matt was another great lecturer that was really patient with me and incredibly supportive as I wanted to learn more and asking a lot more questions. And I really just wanted to have a career in analysis and in football. So, yeah, I was just really thankful that both of those lecturers gave me a lot of their time and support.
Were you seeing other women either on the courses you did or in the football clubs?
Not so much in the football clubs, but definitely on the courses. Not so much in football, but in different disciplines. So the courses that we had, both of the courses, varied from different backgrounds, but it was all different sports, not just football, which again, with a lot of different team sports and different disciplines, there's a lot of crossover and transferable skills. So at that point, I was quite young and a bit of a sponge, so I was just loving meeting new people, learning from different experiences and how can I apply that into what I want to do.
And were the clubs welcoming? Because I suppose, as you say, analysis was a new discipline, so they might have been a bit suspicious of that or not known a lot about it. And also, you're not seeing many women in the clubs, as you say. So, did you find an open door when you went in?
Yeah, so Matt Robbins, as I was coming to the end of my Masters, had a link with Southampton Football Club, and they were looking for interns. So he got me in touch with Andy Stone at the time, who was head of analysis. And I went down for an interview and, they took me on an internship and they were brilliant in terms of, at the time I moved back to Chippenham. I was commuting back and forth, but they gave me a chance to be the Academy Analyst as an intern. And at the time they didn't really have anyone doing anything. So it was kind of a blank canvas. But with his guidance, Steve Corns, an experienced analyst as well, was also in the building. So I had people to speak to get support off. And I also had some brilliant coaches that I got to work with. Some of them were at the beginning of their careers and some of them were quite established, but really saw a benefit of using video and data to either impact their decision making or helping youth development as well. So I kind of joined at a brilliant time where anything that I contributed in terms of analysis was an added bonus. And I had a great under-21s coach who went on to be the technical director there, Martin Hunter, who was brilliant. I think he really took me under his wing. I just obviously wanted to learn more about the way Southampton Academy played, how video can impact him, the players. He just got me involved as much as I wanted to be. I kind of gave everything at that point into trying to help him, trying to help the players, and obviously in return I learned and I grew quite a bit in a short space of time.
And it's become quite a sort of wide umbrella term, hasn't it, analysts now? So we have data scientists, performance analysts, tactical analysts, recruitment analysts, all these different roles. Was it more the performance analyst then in those days? And would that be analysing video footage of matches mainly?
Yeah, so a lot of it was match analysis. A lot of it was heavily team-based, the way we were playing, our style, how did that impose an impact on how other teams played. At that time, there was quite a clear identity within the academy, and that was from Les Reed when he came in. I wanted to have that structure in place across the club, really, a club-wide game model. So at the time, for me, it was, a great education of learning how they wanted to play, trying to develop my technical and tactical understanding, because it was quite basic at the time. But there was a lot of open people that thought video can really help us understand how we want to play, how we want to analyse the game, how we can develop players, not just together, but as individuals as well.
And we had a piece with Joe Carnell from, he was at Derby County at the time with Gary Rowett. So he was talking about how he would be up in the stands on match day with the camera, looking at the game, and then relaying information down to the bench and using sports code to put clips into different categories and things. Was that the role you were doing then at that time?
So at that time, the early days of the academy, I was with the 18s and the 21s. So I'd be filming training, filming the games. At that point, I think both leagues were national. So one weekend on Saturday, I'll be with the 18s, getting the bus up to Sunderland. The next week, I might be going to Manchester United on the Monday with the 21s. So I was pretty much on the road every weekend. But at that point, I was hungry. I was loving taking everything in that I could from either the coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, the players. It was brilliant. But yeah, within that, it was creating opposition meetings, halftime analysis, post-match analysis, getting involved in any individual meetings that we wanted to do. So yeah, like you said, the coaches and the staff at the time were brilliant for just involving me in that. I tried to be really proactive and like I said, we had a clear way of how we wanted to play, so we could structure what some of those meetings looked like.
So obviously it's evolved massively over time, Southampton's analysis department. Like, again, we've had Alex Klein on a webinar who joined as a data scientist, and he was telling us about later on the B team and academy aligning with the first team and how data would inform that, and then video analysis and so on. So, it came on massively from when you'd started with them.
Yeah, I mean, when I first came to the club, there was only 2 full-time analysts. And at the point that I was leaving, there must have been 7 or 8, including work placement student programme as well on top of that, which, when I first was the Academy Analyst, and there was more investment that was put into the football club. So through the fixed cameras, through the new training facility that was on site with the pavilion, we were able to build a team. So I became the lead Academy Analyst. We employed some more full-time guys within the academy, and it gave us an opportunity to, not for me to be going across so many age groups, but to actually get some quality for our players and supporting our staff as well. So yeah, that was for me a really good point where I look back and think I joined at an ideal time where investment was being made, and I'm really thankful for that. Going in as the only Academy Analyst as an intern, and then coming out of it working, we had 4 full-time analysts within the academy. So it grew so much, and I think a credit to obviously the club and the ownership at the time, but also the staff that we employed. A lot of the full-time analysts at the time had come through the work placement programme. So Matt, I kept a really strong link with, who then he moved to Chichester, and there's some other universities, Bath as well, that we were able to work with and support up-and-coming analysts through their degree, but also to give them a real sense of what it's like to be in the industry. Of course, taking into consideration that they needed to study, but in terms of their commitment, credit to all of them that came through. I think they gave everything that they could to maximise the opportunity. And when we had openings, those that, were in probably at the right time were then taken on as well. So in terms of the performance analyst side, we grew massively. And like you mentioned with Alex as well, when he came in, he grew that side. And, we worked quite closely together in terms of going from more of the broader data, analysing our team and individual performance, to really honing in on evaluating what success looks like, not just from a technical and tactical perspective, but also, the physical side and other metrics that we started to take on as well. So we could get a complete profile of players coming through our system, also starting to benchmark and what it looked like to become, what it needed to be, for any individual coming through to be able to perform at the highest level. So we then started to do a lot more work around the world, and also then comparing them players to who we had in the building as well.
So your work, you went on to become head of performance analysis. That would feed into recruitment department as well, would it, and the scouting?
Yeah, so a lot of it we try to align as much as possible. So as I grew with the department, a lot of the analysis, recruitment and coaching frameworks were quite heavily aligned in terms of position profiles, the way we wanted our teams to look, the way our language was. Like I said before, Les Reed and Martin Hunter were really clear in having our playing philosophy aligned across the football club. So that helped with all our departments, and we all sat in a department together. That's analysis and recruitment at the time. It was merged into one. So we could give a good understanding of the performances that were happening in the building, and then we worked with recruitment to see how that looked outside and how that compared. But predominantly a lot of my work was measuring how we impacted development in the football club and how that was then had a knock-on effect to performance as well, long and short-term performance.
And did you work directly with the first team at all? Would you go to matches as part of the coaching and management staff?
No, so at that time I worked quite heavily with the transition players. When the 21s was then changing into the 23s, a lot of those players then were going to and fro. So I did a lot of the individual development plans, and that was actually with Radhi Jaidi when he became the 21s coach. So we did a lot of work looking at not just the footballing side, but any other aspects of, that person's life, whether it be in nutrition, whether it be their strength work, anything else that they might need support in. We started to look at, having a bit of a deeper analysis of how we can help this person progress either Southampton Football Club or beyond. And a part of that was tracking some of the loan players. So who was going out to watch them, working with the recruitment department. Have they got scouts going out to see where some of our players are? And then also Radhi and I would then do individual clips of that player when they would come back into the club and keep contact with those players. So yeah, that was a lot of kind of my exposure to the first team. And because of naturally I wasn't attached to a team, when I moved into the head of performance analysis, I could then kind of be across all the performance processes, frameworks that we had in place to help support the analysts the best I could really, and then on the knock-on effect, support the coaches and the players through the analysts.
And talking about the evolution of analysis, we're now seeing a situation where analysts have been assistants to managers, first team coaches, even managers. I think Danny Roll, who's at Sheffield Wednesday now, was an analyst originally. So again, I suppose that shows how integral that role has now become of football clubs and first teams.
Yeah, I mean, the game's evolving, roles within football are evolving massively. Would I have thought, the role that I'm in now, if you asked me 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I would have said I probably wouldn't have maybe saw it as a pathway. I think the great thing about football is evolving, and expertise are crossing over naturally, because I think in every field you want to have it more applied to what's going on the pitch and off the pitch. And if you can correlate that as much as possible, I think you can maximise the impact for any individual.
It's interesting as well. I mean, you've come in as an intern and you've risen up the ranks. Would you have any advice for anyone coming into a club as an analyst or who aspires to? Because you're obviously trusted by staff, managers, directors of football and so on. How have you gone about gaining that trust?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's just been willing to learn and grow and give as much impact and insight in whatever field you're in. I think I worked incredibly hard. I worked relentlessly, I think, just to be better. And any meeting that I was going into or any conversation, I think I was always true to myself, but given a different viewpoint, I was always, even now, everything I do is very much an evidence-based decision-making process, as much as I can do that. And I think that's what I've always stuck to. So whether it would be, we're having a football discussion and I've got some insight, some data that I can add to and contribute to, but also sometimes it's okay not to. If you don't have anything that's maybe going to add to the discussion, I'm quite comfortable that I don't need to say anything, or maybe I'm asking a question to learn a bit more. I think it's knowing your surroundings, trying to build relationships with people that you can connect with, and working on those relationships. Those, some of the really strong relationships that I've built now have taken time. It's taken people, getting to know me a bit deeper. It's not an angle that if I'm having a conversation with them, it's for me to get a benefit. It's for us to get a benefit. And I think in any team that I've been in, it's important that we all understand the angle that we're coming from, but also that we're all going in the same direction. We want to have collective success. Sometimes that's having some tough conversations, but I think once you build that trust and, you know, those solid relationships with people, you can challenge and support each other. And I think my first stint at Southampton, I've always felt really supported and also challenged, but in a respectful way. I think a lot of that comes down to the care that I have for people and people have for me. So we've been able to do that. And a part of that was I was given more autonomy to build a framework, in the analysis department. And the people that we employed also that came through the work placement student, I think all credit to them, Tom Gardner, who's now with FIFA, Nathan Hurst, who's now the interim head of analysis, and Andrew Muschini, who's gone into, the first team recruitment world. First and foremost, are brilliant people, really caring and kind and committed to doing the best that they can. And they've always had a growth mindset. I think anything that maybe was different or we needed to change things, that they were really open to that. And they helped drive the department forward. I can't take credit for it because they were the guys that were in and amongst the coaches and the analysts when we were really progressing. But one thing, I think we all had a really good trust, respect for each other, and a real special bond that made us want to be successful together, but really work for each other. I really am fond of some of those memories. And sometimes the life of analyst isn't so glamorous, but because we had such a good group, we made sure we made it fun. And when you're hitting some of those low points, we made sure we picked each other up. So those guys, they got me through it. At times when you're in a leadership role or when people are looking to you for answers, the team around you and the team that you're within, I think it's really important to keep you going and remember that we're all in it together. So yeah, those guys were top.
Brilliant. And a common story I've heard about could be a sports scientist, data scientist, analyst, is that daunting first moment when you've got to go in the manager's office, for example, and show them some of your analysis, and I wonder if it can be a culture clash between people with a football background and the playing background and people who've come from a more academic background, I suppose, or a technical background. So was that something you encountered yourself?
No, I think I was very observant of, and I am still now to this day, of how people take on information, the way that they like to receive it. In any role that you've got to be self-aware of yourself and other people and when's the right moment. Depends on which age group you're with or which environment you're in. Obviously, if you've come, the back of a few losses, maybe not just one, it's when's the appropriate time to give information. It might just be on paper, a WhatsApp, a conversation. It comes down to relationships with that individual, with that coach. It might not even be that important for right then. I think that's also another thing. Just because you've got information, it might not be the most important thing for that coach at that time. But over the years, I think the first thing I've tried to do is get to understand the coach that I'm working with, the players, the strategy that we're going after. So, of course, the academy, we had a clear framework of how we wanted to develop players, and we have that now. But when I went to New York Red Bulls, I was kind of fully into the first team world, and it was really probably my first taste of that environment where winning at the weekend, there is higher stakes more than ever. And when I went out there, I didn't know anyone. So I've come from a football club that I've been there for 9 years. I spent my 20s. I grew up there. I loved every minute of it. And now I've completely, moved across the world, gone to a football club there. It really tested me in everything I thought about myself, the good, bad and the ugly. And that's part of why I went. I'd been part of a great department, a great football club. I wanted to go into somewhere new and really test myself. And there I had another blank canvas, but across a first team and an academy. So I was responsible across the board. So that for me was a great chance to learn a different culture, speak to different people, work with coaches that had no idea who I was, what I was about, had different views on why or how we should do analysis. So, of course, that came with different barriers. And in the first year, that was probably one of the toughest years that I've had in my career so far. Moving away from Southampton, from people I love and care about, into a whole new world. And COVID, came into the mix as well on top of it. So there's a lot of different dynamics, but there's a few days where I thought, oh God, what have I signed myself up for here? I had a really great life back home. What am I doing here? But at the time, I knew any day I spent there, the more time I spent there, I'd be stronger because of it. There were some great people that I met, some of my best friends now that I got to meet when I was over there. And during COVID, you end up making strong relationships, probably from the weirdest situations. So we had a COVID bubble at the club. Everyone was testing pretty much every other day at that point. But what I found was that everyone kind of had to, muck in together. I wasn't the only one that had moved away from home. So within that, you got to see a vulnerable side to other people, and we're all in it together. But yeah, it was a real interesting experience.
Yeah. How did that move come about?
It would have been the summer of 2019. At the time, Paul Mitchell was technical director of Red Bull, and obviously we'd worked together before at Southampton. There was an opening over there, and he just spoke to me about it, and said no commitments, but is it something you're interested in? Because he knew that I think I'd come to a point where I needed to push myself out of my comfort zone and I needed a new challenge. And it came about that there was an opening there. So I had an interview with the sporting director, the head coach. I met quite a few staff and went through a rigorous process. And the whole interview process and being there, I thought, do you know what? When in my life am I going to get an opportunity to move to New York, for one, build a brand new department, and also I didn't want to look back and say, oh, I wish I could have gone there, because I knew everything at Southampton and it was something that I didn't know. So I thought there's a possibility that I can grow and develop even more and, enjoy my career, enjoy my life. It wasn't even just about the football. I think I wanted to experience something different. It's amazing that football can take you to different places in the world. And yeah, I got the opportunity to go there and try something different.
I think it is a great name to have on your CV now, isn't it, Red Bull? Even our last few podcast episodes, we had Kevin Thelwell, who I think was your boss there. René Maric, who was at Red Bull Salzburg before. People see Red Bull as being very, very clear on their identity, first of all, and their game model across the whole group. And it's associated with the pressing in particular and data-driven recruitment as well. So... that's a long-winded way of asking, did you learn a lot then when you were there?
Yeah, I learned lots, not even just about football, but about myself, about other people. There was, in our staffing group, individuals from all over the world, even the players as well, from speaking different languages more than I've ever been exposed to before. So I learned so much in terms of leadership from Kev when he was there and his processes. He was really clear on what he expected of us, and I love that. He had clarity in what he wanted the vision to be and the strategy, and I loved being a part of that, being able to execute that in the analysis space. Different coaches. I had Gerhard Struber, who'd come over from Barnsley, and he's probably never used to having the type of analyst that I was. I wouldn't say I'm heavily tactically and technically astute, but I was really good in working with the IDPs with him and trying to balance. We had a really young playing group, so how to balance winning versus long-term development. So we worked really closely together to have IDPs for all our first team players. I did a lot of check-ins with those individuals. He gave me a lot of opportunities to deliver meetings. So if we did a 6-week game review, he would get me to do that. And he was really keen on having different voices, working with the players and different people. And of course I had some of that at Southampton, working in the academy, but working with the first team players to give me that opportunity to do that was brilliant. We had a coach analyst and an opposition analyst at the time as well. So we had in our staffing group really different skill sets, that we could all have different strengths within the department, and also some of my weaknesses they picked up as well, and we worked together to develop that. But yeah, there was so many different characters, even in the dressing rooms, like working with so many different players. One day you're working with a senior international player, and then the next minute you're working with academy players just coming through the ranks. So the dressing room was brilliant, and they were really open to anything that our department really gave them. And I think that come through, messages from Kev and how he included us, from the coaching staff as well. We pretty much worked all really closely together to make sure, we had a goal to be a top 4 finishing club. And every year that we were there, we always made the playoffs. And I think one year that I was there, we were close not to making it and we started to dip. And at the time, I think we had to, really get our heads together, staff, the management at the time, and think, what is it actually that's going to push us through? What do we need? And a lot of that wasn't so much even the football side. It was the connections on the pitch. Does everyone understand their roles and responsibilities? We started doing shorter video meetings. The schedule, in the MLS is crazy. You spend so much time on the road. How can you maximise that time or even give recovery time? So we went really deep into working with all the performance disciplines, coaching staff and management, like I said, to give us an opportunity to recharge when we're away, but also then give us a clear focus of when we're going into a game, what do we need to achieve and why and how we're going to do it, and be really clear with how we're going to do it. And then also looking over the next 6 to 8 week period. So what do those games look like? What do the players need from that period? So you're going into a New York City derby. It's going to be lots of emotions. It's going to be a big crowd. We always know they're going to be very heavily possession based. So what's going to be our strategy? So to go a little bit back, we had an intense pre-season period, so everyone knew how we wanted to play. So at that point, it was more what are going to be our little pressing triggers, who are the individuals that we need to target, what's going to be our strengths. We started to do a lot of workshops with the players on to get them to take ownership, and to a lot of that to drive them from within. And I think what was really important was sometimes we didn't pick up points, but we had to pick everyone up, we had to carry on going, and we had to remain focused. And we had a real togetherness during that period where there wasn't any finger pointing, and we developed a culture where we could be more honest and vulnerable. And again, we did other workshops to help with that, but I think collectively we did a brilliant job to bring everyone together, and we made the playoffs. And I remember when we went to Nashville, and when you've got that game and you're riding on it and the emotions are high, and we got the result we needed, but the feeling when we went into the dressing room at the end was electric, and one of many moments that I won't forget at my time at the New York Red Bulls. But to have, that sense of joy and pride in everything that we did was unbelievable. But if I look back on that year, I think a lot of what I learned I've tried to take in to my next steps, and how I evaluate, and simple things that we did might not necessarily work at Southampton or wherever else, but what was my thought process during that time, how we made the players feel, how we made the staff feel, to make sure everyone was kind of clear of what we wanted to do and why. It sounds quite simple, but we did really just strip it back. I think when you play so many games so often, how much information can you, even myself, it's not like I can take on loads of information constantly in one day, but when you're going from game to game and the pressures of winning, you want to relieve that pressure. And sometimes that can come in different ways, where it might be weird, but you're not having a great period, but you need to get morale up, you need to get the team together. You might need to do some activities that are going to have a bit more fun, which is a bit strange to say, but ultimately, if your players or your staff are under pressure and they're feeling it on their shoulders, are they going to be at their best? Probably not. So to go through that period and feel that pressure, not only on myself to deliver, but being around people, I learned so much in a really short space of time.
Our podcast sponsor, Hudl, offer exclusive video and data from the best youth football competitions in the world with Y-Scout youth competitions. From under 14s to 21s, scout the best talent playing in the major youth football competitions around the globe. Make the correct scouting decisions with objective data from over 70 competitions, 900 teams, and 11,000 players. For more information, go to hudl.com/TGG/Y-Scout.
Is that right that there is a playing identity across the group? Because I guess I always associate Red Bull with that high press in particular. So is that something that all the teams do within the group?
Yeah, there's definitely golden threads that go through the Red Bull model. Of course, with different head coaches that come in, they'll have their slight different ideas of the way they want to build and, you know, play through the thirds and likewise from a press, how aggressive that they want to be. It's definitely to make sure the opponent doesn't have any time and space on the ball and how you can eliminate the strengths from the opposition. But it's very much, there's a lot of golden threads.
Yeah, Rene Maric was talking about it in the last pod. I think he said the same, to attack all the time with and without the ball was how he summed it up.
That's a good way to sum it
up.
Yeah,
and is there like a central Red Bull team then that would be involved with you from time to time? Would you? Because Ralph Rangnick was like the director of football, was he, across the group for a period, I think?
Yeah, so they were building that as I was leaving pretty much because obviously Paul Mitchell was the Red Bull technical director. So they were doing the changes after I left. That side I don't know so much about.
Yeah, no, interesting. And it was very interesting what you were saying as well about the IDPs. I think in the past they were mainly associated with academy football, weren't they, like you say, and development. Yeah. But it seems there's more development at senior level now. That is a cultural change that we're seeing.
Yeah, definitely. I think everyone's developing. Doesn't matter if you've been in the game for a longer time or a shorter time. With new coaches coming in or new staff and there's so much changeover, it's helping the players to learn and adapt quite quickly. You know, a lot of the way society is and how football has evolved, a lot of players are curious about their performances. I remember when I was doing a lot more of the day-to-day analysis after training, during training, half-time, they want to come and look at their clips back. I even remember years and years ago when I was in the academy at Southampton, the 21s group at the time, you know, we would put the games up so that they could watch it. They would come in on the next day and tell me what clips they wanted in the opposition meeting. You know, I think there's a lot more ownership and the players want to review their own performance and get into those habits because they know it's going to develop them and they have so many opportunities and exposure to different staff, not just the technical and tactical, that can help them in their performance. I think they're more open to ultimately getting better because the margins are getting smaller and smaller between academy and first team football. And if you're in the first team space, you know, there's only 11 spots. So anything now, those fine margins, if there's an opportunity to get better, you know, players are going to be more open to that in the elite world that we work in.
Yeah, I think that's a massive thing because sometimes you can hear a debate, might be on TalkSport, for example, where they talk about laptop coaches and, you know, the influence of, say, analysis now and sports science. But I suppose the players have grown up with it, haven't they? And it's what players expect now and are accustomed to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if there's an opportunity for anyone to review back what they're doing, they want to understand why, if they've been successful or not, for the next time they're in a similar situation. I think if it's to help their decision making, I only can see it being a positive tool, whatever department they're you know, working with, especially video. I think now, you know, having video live during games, in training is just an opportunity to learn and reflect. Does it mean you're going to spend the whole time looking at video? No, I don't think you need to. But if it's one clip that's going to support or challenge a decision that you've made and that's going to help you get better, there's an opportunity for it, but also there's a time and a place for it, I think.
Yeah. And it's interesting talking about the evolution of analysts, but also the evolution of the tech, I guess. And this podcast is sponsored by Hudl. So would you utilise a lot of those products? So we're thinking things like Sports Code has been around for a long time, but now we've got Hudl Replay, for example. And you can have the live playback on the training ground. Some people even have the big screens on the training ground, or I know Norwich have a cart that they use. So is that the sort of thing you're using?
Yeah, so we've got Sports Code, Hudl Sports Code at the club, and we've had it for many years, probably since I started at Southampton many, many years ago when you wanted to export a video and you'd have to wait probably an hour for a 5-minute video to export and you couldn't do anything else on the computer at the time. But yeah, we use Sports Code right across the football club. A lot of the PDP coaches have Sports Code as well. And that's more, I think, if there's anything that we want to clip out individually, organisers that they can get from the analysts, and it gives them a bit more flexibility. Hudl Replay as well for live match days for the first team and the 21s especially. Again, I think if you're going to use live analysis, it will differ between age groups depending on the session, what the session outcomes that we want to get, and where we're going to do that on the football pitch. So we've got fixed cameras that have been there for quite some time now, but you've got the ability to capture pitch side as well. So it kind of gives you that flexibility. If coach wanted to review something back or a player did, they have the opportunity to do that.
And is that where you'd use the sort of more portable cameras then for that sort of thing?
Not the training ground. So we can do that directly from the cameras at the moment. But yeah, if it was away with the academy teams, we'd have to do that. And with the first team, they'll just have their connection home and away as well.
Yeah, interesting. Do you use drones at all at Southampton? That's another new thing.
No, we don't. Because we've got quite high cameras, we don't need to. So they're always a fixed point. And depending on what pitch you're on, there's either a wide angle or behind each goal as well. So yeah, again, it gives you the flexibility to think what's the best angle to have a look at that session and where you're going to get the best use of it as well. So from a training ground perspective, yeah, we don't use the drones, and when we're away we'll just have, a iPod, something like that to film the academy games, and yeah, the first team will be in stadiums.
Yeah. And then spinning forward, was it a couple of years ago that you've made the switch back to Southampton, but this time as assistant academy director?
Yeah, so just over a year ago now, there was an opening back at the football club, and the assistant academy director to Matt Hale at the time. And Matt always knew that I was passionate about the academy, about youth development. When I left, I kind of knew that I wanted to go into the academy leadership space, but knew I wasn't ready. And again, I just wanted to have more experiences under my belt. So when the opportunity and the role came up, I had to put my name into the hat to at least give it a go. And I'm thankful that both Matts at the time took me under their wing and gave me the chance to come back. I kind of felt when I left that I always would come back at some point. Even the first year when I was in New York, I felt like I was on a study visit. It was really strange. You have your normal day-to-day when you go to the training ground, the people that you see, my routine. I felt I was over there every time I was in meetings in the Red Bulls or things happened. I was like, oh, this would be good at Southampton, or maybe we should do this like Southampton did it. And it took quite a long time to move away from that. But I always, of course, have a strong love for the football club. So getting a chance to come back into a different space, I'm really thankful and proud that I could do it.
And you're very modest, but you're quite pioneering again, coming from analysis to academy leadership. I don't think I've seen any other examples of that.
Yeah, I think partly because of the way that I left. So I was doing a lot of work my last year with Matt again, and helping in player development, how we're assessing players, what does that look like, and helping his decision-making process gave me a bit more exposure to the academy director world. And then even my last year over in New York, a lot of that was player management, again, looking at the IDP, short-term and long-term, working more with the performance staff. So I was kind of starting to make the transition at that point anyway. So making the jump over, I think, because it's a very familiar club, there was still a lot of people that I knew there, how the club operated. It was a bit more of a smoother transition. I think if I went to a different club, it might have been, I can imagine actually it would have been different, because I had so much passion and love for the football club. I think it just helped when I come back, because in everything that I wanted to do, it always come through that I was caring, that I had a really strong understanding of the legacy of the football club. And because I had some different experiences that put me out of my comfort zone, that I come back with fresh eyes in a way. I think if I was at the football club and stayed there and went into that, I think it would have been quite different and not so easy to differentiate between analysis and then going into this role. But I think when Matt said for me to come back, it was a lot of because of how much I wanted to help develop the football club, and a lot of why I loved being there the first time round is when, players are making their debuts and they're having careers, and how much pride I took in supporting them. And even though it was only a small percentage, I always wanted to be a part of that and continue to do that through whatever capacity I could, at the club.
Yeah, it comes across loud and clear, the love and affinity that you have with the club. it seems from the outside like it might be quite different now just because of the personnel changes. So many have left since Sport Republic came in a couple of years ago, and so many new people now. Russell Martin, Andy Goldie, Academy manager Jason Wilcox, director of football.
Yeah, I think obviously, we have a new academy vision, and with that becomes new structure. Obviously we've had changes in staff, and within that we've been able to have some internal promotions. I think there's probably been more internal promotions than we've ever had before within the academy, which has been brilliant. I think, we're building towards a new vision, and it's going to take a bit of time, and there's obviously a process, and I think we're making a bit of progress already. Of course, that's, some of it, that's players that have come through since they're under nines and they're making their debuts now. So that's a legacy that's also been left, but we're having more international debuts, but also consistently playing with their national teams. Players are committing to longer term futures, and even new players coming in. It's obviously different, but I think because I've had an opportunity for change, I embrace it more, and I think a lot of people are. We have some really good people at the football club, first and foremost, that care about the success, not only of the club, but the people within it, not just staff. Of course, I'm a byproduct of being at the club a long time and having some sort of success, but there's a lot of other staff that are really talented and get an opportunity to flourish. Yeah, with change, natural change management, I think a lot of people have seen it as an opportunity for us to strengthen, really. And I believe we have done that across the football club.
And does Russell get very involved with the academy?
Yeah, so Russell and his team often, if there's under-21s games, academy games at the weekend, and they'll come and watch as well. So they're very connected to the academy, which is brilliant to see. And yeah, we're really thankful that they spend some time within an already busy schedule, coming to see not only just academy players, but the staff as well.
And he's another person that we've had on the podcast. I see I've dropped a lot of names here as I go along. But
just a few.
Yeah. But I thought he was really interesting, actually, in just how open he is, and that focus again on well-being, not being afraid to be vulnerable sometimes, telling your own story. He was talking about Buddhism and all sorts, yeah. So I thought it was really, really interesting, like a new breed of manager, really.
Yeah, he's a really open and honest and genuine person, which is brilliant. I feel like even though he's, incredibly busy, you feel like his door's always open. Of course, I don't obviously spend so much time with the first team, but that's definitely the sense, I think, as a leader, to be so approachable and to give time and feel that care and energy that he gives you is been amazing for the football club.
And I was just going to ask a couple of final questions, actually. Number one, what are your personal ambitions going forward? Because you've got incredible experience already.
Yeah, of course, I'm ambitious. I think, first and foremost, I do the best that I can in the job that I'm in every day. I mentioned this earlier, football's evolving, so roles are evolving. But I probably wouldn't have seen this role possible for me, 3 or 4 years ago, and here I am. So going forward, I want to be the best that I can in this role, help the academy, help the football club as much as I can, and eventually, take up more leadership roles. And I think that's a byproduct of, being true to myself and giving everything I can to make sure we're going in the direction that we need to go in, not just myself, but within the team as well. Of course, I have that responsibility. So we'll see where that takes me. But yeah, I'm pretty open. I think any club, any organisation that I want to go into longer term, I think has to be aligned with my value and future ambitions. And you give so much time and energy. I think you really want to be fully involved, and I'm all in everything that I do. I've got to make sure I work with people in an organisation that also we're aligned on. I think that's only fair for anyone or any company to get the best out of an individual, and hopefully that takes me to, again, meeting more people, newer experiences. That's what I hope for. I think you only get one life, and I want to make sure I enjoy it and maximise it with myself, but also my friends and my family as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think you are definitely a role model, being a woman in a senior role in football, and from a BAME background as well. Is that something you're conscious of? And Is that a question that should be asked? I never quite know, really.
Not really, to be honest. I think, have I faced so many challenges? No. Again, when I first came into Southampton, or even at Red Bulls, they've been quite open, supportive, challenged my ideas. Obviously a big part of my background is analytics, providing insights, a lot more evidence-based. So I bring a different viewpoint. I think I've not faced any challenges where I've gone, okay, this is maybe something different than I thought. I've always worked to make sure I contribute. I don't take energy away. I try to bring more energy, leave a room more energized than less energized. So I've not really faced anything or any challenges.
No, it's interesting because, women are still a real minority in the backroom staff and the senior roles. And I know we've done stories on the diversity code from the Premier League. So clubs now publish their data on the diversity of their staff, and it's still pretty low, really, when you look. So I suppose you do stand out, as I say, particularly in a leadership role in football.
Yeah, I think cognitive diversity is probably the most powerful. So many different ideas and experiences within a workforce can help you grow and develop as a group together, and how you challenge and support each other. Like I mentioned, I think that's really important to get people that think differently, but also, of course, have some form of alignment. Once you have a group of people that understand each other first, can connect together, and any conversation that I've had to have, especially in the past year, that hasn't been always the easiest as we've gone through a transition of a club. I think people know that it comes from a place of that I care, and I've got that from every mentor and leader that I've had come across at both football clubs, is that when they need to have a difficult conversation with me or someone else, the way that it's received is, or the way that they approached it, is because of that person understands that they care, and it's a really good place to start. And of course, I'm still quite early on in this part of next part of this, this chapter in my life, but I'm really reflective of how I speak to people, the way that I do it. And again, it's not, some of that is transferable from analysis, because I used to do that with the coaches and how they take information on, when's the appropriate time, when do I need to maybe be a bit more forceful. But again, I think it comes down to understanding the way people operate. Yeah, that's where I've been able to apply some of what I've done in the analysis field into my current role.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Training Ground Guru podcast in association with Hudl. We'll be back next month with another episode. In the meantime, you can follow our latest updates on the website and on Twitter @ground_guru.